Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me here today and for being here today. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how generosity and kindness is actually selfish and is going to help you in your life. Probably doesn't seem intuitive, but hopefully after I speak to you today, you might think a little bit differently. So, like all of your parents, I'm a parent of a nearly 2-year-old little girl, and I want nothing but for her to be successful in her life. I want her to be happy and healthy and live her life in a happy way. And how do you teach a 2-year-old to be happy? How do you teach her those kinds of skills? Well, one of my favorite avenues to kind of being a happy person is by doing acts of kindness. So last week gave me the perfect chance to actually take my little girl out to do some acts of kindness. It was World Kindness Week. So I decided one of the days to buy a couple of balloons with smiley faces on them, as you can see in this picture. And I thought, let's try and see if we can get her to give these balloons to other kids. A 2-year-old loves her balloons, as you can imagine. I mean, that's like, heaven on earth. So off we went. She hadn't actually seen the balloons. I'd kept them in the car, and we got to the playground, and I took the balloons out of the car, and I said, "Hey, Serena, today we're going to share these balloons with other babies, and if you share the balloons, the other kids will be happy." And she looked at me, and she repeated it back to me. She said, "Mommy, share a balloon, baby happy." I thought, oh, piece of cake. Let's see if she can actually do this. So off we went. We got to the playground, and we walked up to the swings, which are her absolute favorite. And there was another little girl there who was just about 2 years old as well. And Serena looked at her, and she said, "Mommy, share a balloon." And I was really surprised. That was the first thing she wanted to do as soon as we got there. So I thought, all right, here we go. So I helped her unravel her balloon from her wrist, and I put it in her hand because I wanted her to actually be doing the giving. So I put it in her hand, and I waited and watched, and I thought, is she really going to give this balloon? And in 2 seconds, she said, "Here you go." And, she handed this other little girl this balloon. And the next thing she did really amazed me. She looked at me and gave me the biggest smile on her face. And she said, "Mommy, baby happy." And this girl was, she was ecstatic. This random girl walks up to her at the playground and gives her this wonderful smiley balloon. Then I let her play with that second balloon for a couple of days. I thought, let's do a little experiment. Let's let her play with this, enjoy it herself, and then let's try to give it away. So a couple of days later, we were off to one of her other little classes. And after the class, there was a little girl playing with this balloon that was attached to her stroller. And my daughter looked at me and said, "Mommy, share a balloon." And I thought, really? This is your last balloon? All right, let's try this out. So I kind of unraveled the balloon from her stroller, and I put it in her hand. And I thought, this is going to be hard for her to part with. She's had 2 days to grow in love with this balloon. And she held on to it, and she was there for like 30 seconds, standing in front of this girl and just looking at her and thinking about what she wanted to do next. And then about 30 seconds later, she reached over, and she gave away this last balloon of hers. And I couldn't believe it. And it was really beautiful to see. She had the biggest smile on her face. And every day since she did that this past week, she's been reminding me, "Mommy, share a balloon, baby happy." So, you're never too young to really learn these kinds of things that can make us happy. So you might be wondering, in the beginning I said I'm going to talk to you about how generosity is selfish. How is it that doing nice things for other people serves you? It might not seem very obvious. I think this quote by the Dalai Lama really sums it up nicely. He says, "When we feel love and kindness toward others, it not only makes others feel loved and cared for, but it helps us also to develop inner happiness and peace." So it's really as simple as doing something nice for someone else. It makes us feel good, and it makes the other person feel good. So, it's really a no-brainer. Let's take the example of people who smile. A smile is a really simple act of kindness that any of us in this room can do, right? It's easy to flash the biggest smile you can. So what do you think are the positive effects of smiling? I watched this TED Talk the other day, and it's called The Hidden Power of Smiling. And in it, he shared all of these facts about what we actually benefit from by smiling. People who smile, just one smile, enjoy the same level of brain stimulation as eating 2,000 bars of chocolate. I mean, just imagine. Just flash a smile and you've just enjoyed 2,000 bars of chocolate. People who smile are healthier. They report lower levels of stress, higher levels of endorphins, which are the hormones that make us happy, and lower blood pressure. I mean, that's a good thing. Be healthy. You can save yourself some exercise. Just flash a few smiles. People who smile appear to be more likable. You and I all like to be sitting across from somebody who's wearing a pretty smile on their face. But also, more interestingly, people who smile appear more competent. So, when you're out there getting ready for interviews, perhaps for university, for school, later in life for jobs, walk in with a really genuine smile and you're going to convince the other person that you know what you're talking about. Isn't that it? That's a great thing. People who smile also live longer. There was a study done in the US where they measured the smiles on photos of baseball players from their baseball cards. And what they found is that the players who were smiling the widest lived 7 years longer than the players who were not smiling at all in their photos. I mean, who would have thought a simple smile can make you live longer? Another study was done where they examined photos in school yearbooks. I don't know if you have them here in the UK, where it's a book with all the kind of school photos of kids each year. And they did a study where they measured the smiles of people in their yearbook photos, and then they tracked them for 30 years. And what they found is those who were smiling in their school photos reported more successful marriages and higher levels of well-being and happiness throughout their lives. And finally, smiling makes other people smile. I mean, you're walking around and someone flashes a huge smile at you, and you can't help but smile back. And evolution has shown that smiling is contagious. So what can you do to do an act of kindness? I mean, it can be a little intimidating the first time you go out and maybe you want to buy a coffee for the person behind you at Starbucks or whatever you might be trying to do. It can be a little daunting. We've come up with 3 simple tools that I'm going to share with you to help you along the way as you're trying out your acts of kindness in your life. The first is called a smile card. So back in 2003, there were some kind of 17, 18-year-olds just like yourselves sitting around, and they were talking about how it's fun to do pranks. But pranks usually have a negative kind of spin to them. And they thought, well, what if we did kindness pranks? We did nice things for people, but we did them anonymously, so they didn't know who was doing them. And then how do we let them know what we're doing? Well, they developed this little thing called a smile card. And it says on it, "Smile, you've just been tagged. Experiments in anonymous kindness is the name of the game, and now you're it." So it's a game of tag where you do something nice for somebody and you leave this card behind. They pick up the card and they realize what's just happened, and they're invited to pay it forward and do something nice for somebody else. And you're all going to have some smile cards to take back with you today so you can experiment in your own lives. We've also developed something called a smile deck. It's a normal deck of playing cards. You can have a nice game of poker with it as well. But you can also do acts of kindness with it. Each card in the deck has a different act of kindness idea. So when you're running out of ideas, you need something creative to do, just shuffle the deck, draw a card at random, and go out and do that act of kindness. We have smile card decks as well for each of your teachers to take back to your school. So you can perhaps try this out in your classrooms as well. And the last thing is that kindness is one of the things that the more you share it, the more people are inspired to do it in their own lives. So we've set up a website where people log in anonymously. You have a nickname, so nobody even knows who you really are. And you share your acts of kindness. We have a little Twitter feed where you can share little blurbs of kindness that you're doing, or you can write full-blown stories. And it's not to brag, of course. The whole point about sharing your stories is actually to inspire other people to try these things out in their own lives. I know for myself, I feel really moved to do something kind when I hear a story about something nice somebody else might have done. So you might be wondering, what can you do in your own lives? You all are capable people who can go out and do nice things, and I just wanted to share a few small ideas. Don't think of the biggest, grandest things that you're going to do that are going to just change the world in one big swoop. Think of just the small things you can do in everyday life, because these are the things that are really going to make a change. Something as simple as holding the door open for someone. You can maybe play doorman at your school for 10 minutes one day and hold the door open for everyone and, perhaps flash them a smile while you're doing that. Another idea is teach somebody something new. You might have a little sibling, you might have a neighbor that's younger to you. Just take maybe 5 minutes and teach them something new they didn't already know how to do. Sharing gratitude is a really great way to share kindness. You probably have a person in your life, perhaps a teacher, another student, who's really been there for you. And just write them a thank you note, just sharing your appreciation for what they've done for you in your life. Listen, you guys are all being great listeners right now, and that's a huge act of kindness. And do that for your friends. Be a friend who really listens. Perhaps you have a friend who's going through a tough time. Spend time with them. Just listen to their story and be there for them. Donate, don't dump. You probably have old phones sitting around at home. But books that you're not using anymore, perhaps old clothes that don't fit you, don't throw them away. Next time, maybe think about donating those things to a charity, and they'll put it to really good use. And finally, one idea that was actually submitted by a 16-year-old girl who shared a story on our website is leaving out positive notes in your school. She went to a school where there was a lot of animosity between all the kids, and she wanted to do something to make a little bit of a positive spin at her school. So you see this little note up here that says, "You are beautiful." She wrote little positive message like this on just little Post-it notes that are sticky papers and stuck them on the mirrors of the toilets around her school. And she did this early in the morning, so nobody knew who actually did it. And then she watched to see how people were reacting. And she said it was amazing to see that people really, it brought a huge smile to their face to see these positive messages in places where they just weren't expecting to see them. I wanted to leave you with a story that really moved me and might just inspire you to go out and do something kind when you leave here today. It's about an 8-year-old girl, and it was shared by her father. He said, she was sitting at dinner one night, did not want to eat her dinner. She was just on protest. No, thank you. Her mom tried, her grandmother tried. Dad was sitting there with her finally. And they decided to keep pushing her and pushing her. And she said, all right, fine. I'll eat my dinner if you grant me one wish. And they said, okay, sure. And she said, no, you have to promise me you'll grant me this one wish. And they said, okay, sure, we'll grant it to you. So she finished her dinner, and she said, all right, are you ready? And they said, yeah. She said, I want to shave my head. And the parents were confused. An 8-year-old little girl, why does she want to shave her head? Of course, grandmother was like freaking out. What are you thinking? You're a little girl. You can't shave your head. And she said, all my life you've taught me to keep my promises. This is a promise I'm asking you to keep. You promised me you'd grant me this wish. So they did. And that night she had her head shaved. The next day, the dad was taking this little girl to school. And he watched her run off to school. And another little boy got out of his car and was calling after his daughter, and he also had no hair. And the dad thought, maybe this is some new trend at school. Everyone's, shaving their heads. And just as he thought that, a mom walked up to him and tapped him on his shoulder, and she said, thank you. And he was looking at her like, who are you? Why are you thanking me? And she said, thank you. You have a really beautiful daughter. The little boy who actually ran behind her is my son, and he actually has leukemia. And he started losing his hair a couple of months ago from chemotherapy, and he started not coming to school. And your daughter came to visit him at our house, and she promised him that if he would come, that she would shave her own head if he would come back to school. And that's actually why your daughter is doing this. And of course, the father was just in tears. He had no idea what his daughter's motivation was for shaving her head. But just this really small act of kindness changed so many people's lives because, the parents, of course, were blessed. The kids, this kid who wasn't coming to school was back at school. So you never really know how far the ripples of your acts of kindness are going to go in the world. And I invite you to go out and experiment. Thank you.